Good evening. My name is Aziza Chaouni. I am an assistant professor here at the John H. Daniel School of Architecture, Landscape and Design, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to this lecture tonight. As many of you know, the Daniels faculty has an ambitious public lecture series featuring leading academics and professionals working in the fields of architecture, landscape architecture, and design. In addition to tonight's lecture, this week we are holding the event Metropolis and Mobile Life at the Isabel Bader Theater. Metropolis and Mobile Life will feature a discussion on the relationship between physical mobility and social mobility, and the ways in which our mode of moving in and through cities influences our attitudes towards them. Please visit our website to find the link to RSVP. We hope that you can all make it. Now, on to tonight's lecture speaker. This evening, I am very honored to introduce innovative French architect Manuelle Gautrand. Manuelle is a graduate of l'Ecole Nationale Supérieure d'Architecture de Montpellier and worked in a number of different architecture studios in Paris for 6 years before starting her own firm, Manuelle Gautrand Architecture, in 1991. Since then, she has been introducing colorful contemporary architecture to Paris and other cities throughout France and beyond, marrying the modern and the historical with the goal of, I quote, re-enchanting the city. Manuelle built projects ranged from cultural facilities to residential, commercial, and office buildings. Recently completed work includes the famous origami office building on Freeland Avenue in Paris, La Gaîté Lyrique, a historic Parisian theater which was transformed into a center for contemporary and digital art and music, and La Cité des Affaires, a landmark administrative and office building in Saint-Étienne. Manuelle lectured at l'Ecole Spéciale d'Architecture and the Paris-Val-de-Seine School of Architecture between 2000 and 2003. She also told me that she taught at the University of Florida at Gainesville. She teaches architecture workshops held throughout Europe and is consultant to, among others, the Education Authority in Grenoble and the mission interministérielle pour la qualité des constructions publiques. In 2005, Manuelle was elected as a statutory member of the French Architecture Academy. Please join me in welcoming Manuelle to the podium.
Thank you very much for this introduction. Thank you. So I will try really to respect the 1 hour lecture to let you ask a lot of questions. Just to introduce me a little bit more, I just would like to express the fact that I'm trying to work on several types of projects. I'm really not specialized, and you will see different categories of projects that I have made or where I am selected for competitions and so on. We are approximately 25 architects at the moment, and you will see through the project the way that I am working on architecture. We are doing a lot of models, we are experimenting a lot of materials, and we will see that through the projects that I will present. The first type of project on which I'm working at the moment is commercial projects. I have the feeling that the client, the developers, try more and more to find creative architects to reinvent a little bit the question of the shopping mall and in more general way all the places where there are a lot of commercial activities. The first building that I will show, I think you know it. It's a sort of communication center for the car brand Citroën in Paris. I show you just a few pictures which are very old. There was a first building made by André Citroën in the 1925, something like that. And it was a very contemporary architecture on the Champs-Élysées. The idea of the client was really to create a sort of showroom, communication center, and the goal was really to have an amazing architecture, a very contemporary building, which can really speak about the atmosphere of Citroën, its history, its spirit, and also the future of Citroën. In fact, I have tried to work as an architect, but also perhaps with a feeling of marketing. And I had really only two ideas. I tried to be very concentrated on two ideas. The first one was to invent the container, I mean the building, the envelope, the shape of the building, like a sort of, not a car, but I wanted with the envelope to express deeply the brand. So the idea is to create a sort of volume which can express all the infinity of spirits of the brand, which can really tell about the logo of the brand. So the idea is to fold a sort of envelope. It's like a folded glass which tell only about the logo of this car brand. You can see the envelope here. It's really like a showcase. It's only transparent. Even if the building is high, something like 28 meters high, so something like 30 meters, I wanted to be only transparent, like really it's a huge vitrine. And in it you will see the second idea, which is the container express the brand, the content express the car. And because the site is very small, it's only 300 square meters, something like that, and I was not allowed to build a lot of square meters in it. So I wanted to create a lot of breathing spaces. There are only something like at the end 1,000 square meters, but it's divided in a huge volume. And in the center of this volume, it's a sort of sculpture, which you can see here. It's a sort of tree of cars, which is really in the middle of the building. It doesn't allow a lot of place for the public. The public has to go around this huge sculpture of car. But I wanted really to emphasize the cars and to make in sort that the public goes around. He doesn't have too much space, but he's only looking at the cars everywhere. He is only concentrated on this central sculpture. Because the building is very vertical, the idea was to create this sculpture with 8 circular platforms. And when you go up, instead of having only poor ceilings, the idea was to create mirrored ceilings to double the cars. So when you go up, you see the reflex of the car. When you go down, you see the cars themselves. And around those two ideas, the project is very simple. It was very complex to build, but you have only those two ideas. The content express the brand and the container express the brand and the content express the cars. You have a huge mast, which is red. Everything around this tree of cars is red because it's the color of the brand. So you just have the mirrors and the sculpture, which is red. The basement is full of red too. It's a multimedia place dedicated to movies and to multimedia, I mean to games. You can have video games around the cars. We have made a lot of models in the office, and the idea was really to sculpt the model, not in the way to invent a project like a car. The reason was more because the price on the Champs-Élysées is so expensive. I wanted to build the more centimeter that I can inside the urban regulations. So we have tried really to be attached, to fit the best we can do to the urban regulation, and it gives to us this very curved volume, which is very high in the front of the Champs-Élysées and which has a sort of smaller rear at the end of the site. On the right side, you can see a model that we have made to see the way to dispatch all the passerelles, the stairs for the public around the sculpture of cars. That was the first model that we have made for the competition, and I think that even in the competition, all my ideas were in this first model. The idea of a transparent curved volume, the idea of expressing the brand through the logo. The logo is a sort of shape like that, and all the facade is made with folds of glass which express this shape of the logo. There are red filters in the glass to express a little bit more the idea of the brand, which is white and red. On the left, on the top, you see one of the models that we have made, and on this part, you can see the prototype. We have worked with German builder, constructor, and they have tried a lot of prototypes, mock-ups, and that's the last one, which was very, we were happy with it. That is pictures of the reality, it's not models. Here you can see the rear of the main facade. From the outside, we were not allowed to express in a too bright way the red filters. So in front of the red filters, we have put translucent filters to get a very pale red, a sort of very pale pink. But from the inside, you can really see the red, and it's very warm because it creates a lot of reflects inside the building. And you can see the top of the building, which is sculpted, has a car, like a car, but also really connected to the French urban regulation. That was the phase under construction. It's a very technological phase under construction. In fact, it was a very complex project because it's often very difficult to do simple things. And it's very difficult to mask the technology, the engineering, and really the goal was to mask all that because the cars, Citroën, it's absolutely not like Mercedes or some other brands. The idea of the creators is really to do cars where the first impress that you have to have is an impress of comfort or of smooth, and it's not aggressive cars. So the idea for us was to create a very technological building, but after that to mask everything in a very pearly white atmosphere. So the phase under construction is very dark, it's full of steel, but at the end you see nothing. You see just very bright white and red colors and very smooth details, and you don't see any steel anymore. That is another building that we are trying to do in Montpellier in the south of France. We try because it's very difficult at the moment to obtain the permit. I have decided, I have convinced the client, who is a French developer, to create a very mixed-use program, which was not the case during the competition. The competition asked us to create a building with hotel and restaurant. And we have decided to mix those two programs with offices and also with housings. And we were very happy to do a project which is really a deep mixed-use building. The site, it's, in fact, you can see the center of Montpellier. It's a very old town, which is really very, very beautiful. And you can see the railway station, which is, which is here. That is the main square of Montpellier with the old theater. So the really old part of the town is here. Sort of intermediate part is here. And you have the railway station. And now they are creating a very big district, which will be a mixed-use one. And they have organized a competition on which we have worked and that we have won. It's on this side, so very, very close to the railway station. The site was in a way difficult because it's a triangular site, which was very narrow, which was surrounded by a sort of bridge that you can see here, and a sort of road which is curved. The site is not very full of harmony, but the interest of this site is really to create a sort of transition between the old part of the city, which is very low, and transition with the future district that the town of Montpellier wants to build, which will be much more high. And the building that we have proposed is really the mixity of a lot of programs, but also of several scales to allow the future district to erect. That is the site. We are on the bridge here, and the road is turning like that, so it's difficult to have an architecture which is not aggressive in such a site. We have decided to create a sort of podium, which is here, with all the entrances of the different programs and with the offices. And on this podium, we have decided to create a sort of unique volume, which is very regular. And in the first part, it contains the first hotel. The second part, it contains the second hotel, because there are two. And after that, the third part is containing the housings which were not anticipated by the town, but at the end they were very happy to see that this mixity was successful for the architecture. And we have decided to fold this very long volume to respect the triangular shape of the site. And you will see it more, in a good condition here. That is a model that we have made. You can see the railway station which is here. So the first two volumes are very low. Very low. It's 6 levels, something like that. But they are perfectly integrated with the north part of the town, with the old city. And when the volumes are moving up, to create the volume dedicated to the housings, we have 5 levels more, and the idea is really with this one to anticipate the future district of the town. And the idea was to create very beautiful housings. In this part we have some big rooms for the hotel, which is going up, and this part is dedicated to the housings. And it's like a bridge, so the most part of the apartments have 2 views, one of the north of the old city, one of the south on the new part of the city. That is the first 3D models that we have made. That is some pictures. We have decided to create an envelope which is really progressively more and more delicate, perforated. For the hotel, we are not so much perforated, but when we go up to accompany the housing, the apartments, which have a lot of balconies, we have more and more transparency. We have sliding panels. We are working a lot with natural ventilation because we are in the south of France and it's very hot during the summer. And one of the main points of the project was the idea to encourage a sort of common place for all the types of programs. It's this volume which is creating a sort of monumental media lounge. In fact, it is a sort of bar, which is really mainly for the hotel, but it's also a bar, a cafe, a media lounge, which is open for everybody outside and also for the housings, and also to connect the meeting rooms, which are on this floor for the offices. And the idea is to give to this building and to all the inhabitants of this building a sort of common place that really they can enjoy. This volume is facing the south. It's protected from the rain, and it's a sort of scenography, it's a sort of theater, which is looking on the south of the city. You can see some more pictures. The facades are made with metallic panels, which are perforated. The color is white. Only in this media lounge, which is this huge window on the town, we have the idea of putting a sort of holographic varnish to reinforce the reflects, to create some colors connected to the shadows and to the sun. And also during the night, there are some very beautiful effects connected to this holographic varnish. That is the drawings for the hotel and for the housings, and some sections which are expressing the bridge. We have a huge Virandelle beam, which is something like 28 meters, and in fact it's not so difficult because the bridge is really connected to the two part of the small volume. That is the last project that I would like to explain to you connected to commercial activities. I have after that some other project. That is a competition. We don't have one for the moment. I mean, there is no winner. The client is a very big French commercial developer whose name is Auchan. And it's a project which is really connected to the Grand Paris. In the north of Paris, you have a lot of agriculture. You have still a lot of agriculture. You have Roissy, which is here, and you have a lot of natural lands with really a lot of work on agriculture here. And the idea of the client is very difficult because he wants to create a huge place dedicated to commercial activities, to cultural equipments, and to leisure. It's something which will be 600,000 square meters, something like that. And he wants to be very connected to the airport. He wants to create a place which is full of different atmospheres connected to Europa. The idea is to tell a little bit more about Europa. When, for example, you come from America or Asia, the idea is for the people to go in this place to get the first feelings about Europa, the north, the south, the east of Europa, the Britain, the France, the Spain, and to go through several universes connected to the different climates, different cultures, and after that, of course, to visit directly London, Madrid, and so on. The project has a lot of critics because he is in the some last agriculture places of the north of Paris. Of course, you have all that, but this place is very close to the south of, the center of Paris. We have made, I don't want to go into too much detail, but we have worked a lot on the program. In my team, we wanted really to work deeply on the atmospheres of Europa, and we have made sort of, it's like 6 buildings, 6 atmospheres, which are completely different and which are connected together. And if each of them has leisure, cultural equipments, and commercial activities, and you can really go from one to the other with a lot of walks. So you can see the different type of programs. You can see the atmospheres. We have worked on geographies, of European geographies, and the idea is to work on specific geographies in Europa, but after that to connect them in a really deep way. We don't want to have partitions. We want to interact between them. You will see after the reason to work with curves, because we will be really integrated into the landscape, and we have a huge constraint, which is to be covered by a sort of huge park which will flow from the north to the south, coming to the center of Paris. So we have worked on a program which is organic, which is full of curves, to prepare a place for the park which will be on the cover, on the roof of our project, which will also be very organic. Anyway, we have curves that you can see here. The blue is leisure, the orange is commercial activities, and the pink is cultural. So for each atmosphere, you have really a sort of very deep mixity between the three, leisure, commercial, and cultural. I was really inspired by the site, by the lines of the furrows. The rain is going along the lines because the site is sloped, going down in the direction of Paris. And the idea of the project is to take the lines and to create loops with the lines. So we accompany the public because this part, it's still a park. So we accompany the public who will have the possibility to go up on the roof of the project. And it's like in a mountain. It will take promenades in a sort of park, and they will have the possibility to go down in the shopping mall, in the different places dedicated to commercial, leisure, and so on. But the integration of the project, it's very deep. I was really impressed by the context and the curls that we have made. It's really the idea of working with the furrows and to turn them into this project. You can see a little bit better. The green is the color really because that is a natural park, and that is the park which is on the roof of the project. Here you can begin to see the work that we have made on the lines. It's like the furrows that we have reinterpreted into the project. And you have different colors of park. For example, that is lavenders because we are on the roof of the Mediterranean atmosphere. That is the North atmosphere, the France, the East Europa atmosphere, and the Britain atmosphere. So on each part of the roof, we are working with specific landscapes which really tell deeply about the geography, the climate, and the spirit of this part of Europa. That is a roof view. The site is beautiful because when you will be on the roof, you will have the possibility to see Paris. The Eiffel Tower is somewhere here. And you have little, no, it's not little, it's big programs which are emerging on the roof. It's the cultural equipment because we wanted for them to be upon the project and underneath the project. We wanted for them really to be to create a sort of continuity between underneath the roof and upon the roof. That is the idea of the balcony with the Tour Eiffel that you can see here, and the different atmospheres that we would like to invent. That is the flows which are underneath the roof, which have the possibility to connect each universe of the Europa. You have squares which are in a small scale to speak about the urban European scale. You have a lot of 3D sketches and programmatic sketches to express the way to organize the program. That is pictures of the main circulation from north to south with the commercial activities which are really close to you here. One of the entrance of the project, The square, for example, here you are in the Nordplatz Square. You have just behind a ski facility, and we wanted really to give a sort of very cold and full of stone and mountain atmosphere in this part. That is the ski. One of the entrance when you come by car. And the way that we have emphasized all the cultural equipments. They are like little points, but the idea for them was to create a sort of disobedience. I mean, they interrupt the flow of the leisure or of the commercial activities to create contrast and to make it so that everybody can enter into them without knowing before. We want to be, to make it so that the public has the possibility to go easily inside between two shops, for example. That is some other pictures. The way for the cultural equipment to go through the roof and to also create a lot of entrances on the top of the park. And the green line is a sort of train that we wanted to link. So it's a sort of rooftop tram, like in the mountain where you have a sort of promenade that you can take on the top of the mountain. It's the same idea. Around the sustainability, because the project is so huge, we wanted to create external projects to help our project, but also to help the district. And the idea was to create a sort of project which is like a sort of open source project. And it can becoming also the logo, the brand of the project. About the cultural equipments, you can see the first one that I have built a few years ago. It's the refurbishment and the extended part of the Lille Modern Art Museum in the north of France. You have an existing building which is black and the extended part which is red colored. The existing building was built by Roland Simonet and was listed around 2000, something like that. So it's one of his last construction, and it was quite immediately listed. So during the competition, we had really to work with the monumental authorities, and the idea for them was to create an extended part which was really separated. We had to keep a distance between the old building and the new one. Perhaps for you it's very difficult to understand that, but in France, when we have a listed building, it's very difficult to allow a contemporary architecture. The monumental authorities are always afraid about the contemporary architecture. And for me, it was really a pity because the curator of the museum wanted for this extended part to accompany a very beautiful outsider art collection. And the idea for this extended part dedicated to outsider art was to create a link, a connection between the outsider art and also the contemporary and the modern art. So the distance was very bad for that because the link cannot be really efficient. I have read a lot about Roland Simonet, and I wanted to respect the wish of the curator. I thought at this period that the most important thing was really to help for this outsider art to be close to the other forms of art, because the critics of art are always discussing if outsider art is a form of art or not. So I wanted for this form of art to be really deeply linked with modern and contemporary art. I decided not to respect the distance and to envelop the existing architecture of Roland Simonet. It was also a way to respect the park, which is beautiful, surrounding the existing building. So less I take place, more I respect the park, and I let a lot of bracing spaces around the global museum, and I let also a big place for the park to develop itself. I have organized the extended part like two arms, which are telling to Roland Simonet that I love the existing building, and I wanted to be very close of this existing architecture. I wanted also to create a lot of links between the administration for the collections, for the flows. With this idea, I have created a sort of technical flow which is parallel to the public flow. So in terms of functionalities, it was much more efficient to do that. But also in terms of architecture, I insist on that. It was very important to link the old building with the new one, to link the old collections with the outsider art collection. And at the end, I have won the competition, so. That is a model that I have made to express the fact that even if I like the existing architecture, I wanted to be independent and to have my own vocabulary to envelop the outsider art. I didn't want to do the same architecture than Roland Simonet. That is it's a drawing that I like because it expresses the fact that on the extended part I have made something which is quite different in terms of volumetry. The rooms are not rectangular, they are very long and folded, but the scale is the same. I've always tried to have my own vocabulary, to have my own feeling connected to the outsider art, but in the same time I wanted to keep the same scale and to respect with the scale the architecture of Roland Simonet. It's a very flat project like his architecture. He has made his architecture like a sort of villa, and I have made the same. It's a sort of villa, but in a more organic way to arrange, to accompany, to envelop the collection. So now the result is that I had the possibility to create a sort of continuous promenade, for example, between Dubuffet and Annette Messager, who is a very great artist of outsider art. When the people are moving in the museum, they are quite not discovering when they are passing through contemporary art and they are arriving into outsider art. That is the way to organize the 5 very long volumes. The phase under construction. It's a building that I have made with concrete, but the roof are very light. It's a steel structure. At the end, you cannot remark it because it's like really 5 fingers, 5 roots, which are emerging from the landscape. And because the outsider art is very fragile, we had to create places and rooms which are quite a little bit dark because the light is very dangerous for the art. So you just have little perforations, and it was a sort of way also to create a link with the architecture of Roland Simonet, because he has worked a lot in North Africa. And my way to create the perforations was inspired by the moucharabier, which are very often in the North Africa. So I wanted to tell to Roland Simonet that I had, in a way, the same roots, the same inspirations. I have to go more quickly because, yes. It was a little bit difficult to do the walls because, as you can see before, you have walls like that with only a sort of sculpture without any void, and you have the walls with the perforations. The first one, they are made with molds like that. And the other, it's prefabricated fiber concrete, which have been made outside, and the people have brought the big panels to put them on the windows. Yes, you can see the panels which are prefabricated. The inside, why the volumes are very long and folded, because the idea was to, the outsider art, it's sometimes very violent, and I wanted for the 5 different themes to be separated, and when the people are moving in each of them, they discover in a succession of places the different art pieces. They don't discover all the pieces in the same moment, because sometimes it's a little bit too much. So it's a sort of very small discovery. It takes time, and after each room, you have the possibility to have a small bracing spaces. You have the possibility to look at the landscape, and you come back to another long volume. And here on this place, which is the introduction place, you can see 3 of the long volumes which are going down to the landscape. But the folds really help to discover in a very smooth way art pieces after art pieces, the whole collection. La Gaieté Lyrique, it's a strong refurbishment. Really, I could say that I had demolished the place, and I have rebuilt a place dedicated to digital art. It's one of the main cultural equipment made by the mayor Bertrand Delanoë. He wanted absolutely to create this equipment in the center of Paris. And that was the huge difficulty, because the existing building was an old theater, which was itself quite demolished during the 80s, except 2 places inside, which are the vestibule on the ground floor and the main foyer on the second floor. Except those 2 rooms, everything was demolished, and we had to. It was demolished to create a sort of leisure park, which was really a catastrophe, because it was only open for 1 week during the 80s. And after, the building was alone, without any users, for quite 20 years. So the mayor decided to put here this digital art equipment. But the difficulty was really to invent a program which could fit with something like 6 or 7 levels. And we are inside a plot in Paris without any windows, except the windows which are listed here. So it's a very dark place in the middle of something like 125 apartments. And it's difficult to imagine in such place to create a digital art equipment with 2 or 3 concert halls. That was the challenge. We wanted really to create a sort of mix between the visual arts, the music, and to create also a mixity between the public and the artists. So it's a sort of melting pot between artist, public, visual arts, and music. And I will go through in a quick way, because it's very difficult to explain in detail. I need a long time. But I wanted to create 2 types of places in the building. Places which really have to be formal, which have to be acoustic waterproof, which have to be insulated. We have 3 places like that, 2 concert halls and a sort of cinema. And everything else, the rest of the building, I wanted for it to be very flexible. And I've called all the other places bracing spaces. They are very flexible. they have always the same type of ceiling, same type of floor, and the idea was for them to change the program. So, for example, for 6 weeks, it can be everything, all the dressing spaces can be dedicated for artists because they have to prepare an exhibition. After that, it can be a resource center, it can be an exhibition place. So it can be an extended part of the cafe. So the idea was to create around the 3 main concert places square meters which are totally flexible. You can see the phase under construction and the way how much we were completely étouffés. Yes. In this Parisian site, with no possibility to have windows and no possibility to have ventilation. I mean, it's a very, very dark place. That is a sort of main plan. You can see the main concert hall, which is here. And the acoustic idea of the project is to create, it's like Russian dolls. So you have 4 or 5 very insulated envelopes, which are going smaller and smaller until this place, which is the main concert hall. That is a section. You can see the 3 main places, the first concert hall, the second one, and the little cinema. And everything else, it's very flat levels, like dressing spaces, which are totally flexible. That is a phase under construction for the concert halls. We have a lot of flexibilities inside. The floors are moving up and down, the ceiling too, and the walls are also very flexible with a lot of mobile panels and so on. That is the main concert hall. You have the possibility to have a stage which is here, but you can have many stages in the middle. You can have a stage on the opposite side of the concert hall. So the flexibility is also in this main place. You have also seats which are mobile. So on the left, you don't have any seat. It's like a wall, and you can be stand up. And on the right, you have something like 380 seats to see concerts which are more calm. That is a small theater, the small concert place, which the floor which is moving up and down, and you have different scenography. It's a place where the sound is very, very deep. So when you experiment this place, it's really full of impressions. That is the sort of cinema. And that is the development of the dressing spaces, which are folded in the building from the basement to the top. That is one of them, which is surrounding the main concert hall, and they are always doing installations, that's dancers, from an English art team, which is called We Could Never Be a Dancer. That is art installation, also made by English artists. That is in the basement, close to the little concert hall. That is another dressing spaces, which is here colored in yellow, because it's also a work made by an artist. And that is a furniture that we have made, which is called éclaireuse. The idea for this furniture is to move. They are moving everywhere in the building. Some of them are shelvings. Some of them are places to work. Some of them, the shelves are here, the place to work are here. When they are pink, it's dedicated to multimedia, so you can be sit or in several positions, and you can really be immersed in multimedia installations. And the idea was to really connect all the éclaireuses together and to make it so that they have the possibility really to move everywhere in the building to accompany the different programs when they themselves move. That is some of the éclaireuses, multimédia éclaireuses. The centre de ressources, which is actually in the second level, and you can have a lot of people who can work the shelvings in the library. And you have also this type of furniture. It's like lamps, but you can also sit down, and it can also help you to create partitions inside the dressing spaces. Here you can sit. Here you can have the bar, some seats to see installations. And that is the historical foyer. I had to keep it, but I wanted to keep it really in a historical atmosphere, so I didn't want to repaint it. I just kept the really authentic paintings of this place, just with the contemporary furnitures and the lamps. And really it's a building which is like a tool. It means that the artist can really play with the building like they want. Often the artist says that they are very lucky because they can invent absolutely everything in the building. All the lamps, all the equipments are connected together, and when they are on the top of the building, really in the places dedicated to the artist, they can order and organize everything in the building from the top to the basement. So there is a lot of technology. The budget was something like 50 million euro, and 10 of them are dedicated to all the multimedia and the equipment. That is a last project that I am doing in Israel. It's a very exciting project, but in the same time very difficult because it's in Ashkelon, in the south of Israel. It's not far away from Gaza. Ashkelon is here, and it's also a very exciting project because it's asked by the mayor of this town who has a lot of energy. He wants to create a very big project dedicated to a lot of arts. It's a conservatory dedicated to contemporary art, to theater, to music, to dance, and also to traditional choir, which is called Aura. And the difficulty of the project is that the site is very small. You can have the feeling that there is a lot of place in Ashkelon, but the mayor wanted absolutely to put the building in a place which is close to the entrance of Ashkelon. And we have a site which has forced us to create a very vertical project, which is an interesting point. You can see a view of Ashkelon. They have a lot of housings. They have a lot of immigration. That's also the reason why they had to create a new cultural equipment. The sea, the Mediterranean, is on the left. The site is, I mean, the global site is very, very beautiful. It was a place before. Here you have ruins because it was a place 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago where there were a lot of Arab people. So it's a very mixed place with a strong history. And the motorway to go to Tel Aviv is here, and the site is just here when you enter into Ashkelon. The site is here. The surroundings are very, I mean, it's not like in France. So it's very heteroclite. You have very big building with 15 stories, I mean floors of housings. You have a very awful building which is here dedicated to sport. So the architecture is not so beautiful. The program is here, so the 4, now 5 parts dedicated to all those forms of arts. And so the idea was to create this vertical building connected to the narrowness of the site, but also connected to something else, which is that in Israel, in the public equipment, you have to create a shelters room to be protected from rockets. And you have to have those types of rooms in a very simple place on each level, so that people, if there is a fire or a rocket, they have to be in less than 4 minutes in these shelter rooms. So the idea was to create a sort of very strong central tower in the middle, which is not so big. It's something like 17 meters by 17 meters. And in this small tower, you have all the vertical circulations and you have all the shelter rooms. And at the end, this constraint was very helpful for the project, because we have decided to create in this tower a sort of generous place where everybody meets, where also there is the possibility to create installations, to do exhibitions. It will be a very beautiful volume. And on this tower, around it, all the programs are organized. The idea was to give to each place, to each program, exactly the good dimensions, the length, the width, the heights. And because every dimension was different, the result is full of variety. We have really respected each dimension to be perfect, and the volumes are stick together around the tower in this, like a puzzle, in this location, to accompany all the circulations. But you can remark that each of them, quite each of them, has a different height, different size, to respect in a perfect way all the constraints of the program. We have made several models one more time, and the idea was to get benefit of those volumes to create a lot of outside terraces, and to make in sort that the users can work inside, but they can also work outside. They can have the possibility to rest outside. The views are, of course, beautiful. You have a lot of sun. So it's very helpful also to have more square meters to work outside on the terraces, which are protected from too much sun. That is one of the models. We have although the idea of enveloped the building with a sort of skin which is made with metallic panels. You will see that after. So the idea of the shadows of a lot of terraces which are really open to the public and to the users. And of course, because the volumes are really surrounding the tower, you have terraces everywhere, and you can get very beautiful views on the town of Ashkelon, on each orientation, the north, the south, and so on. And some of the terraces are full of shadows, which is a good idea because it's so hot in the warm moment. That is an example of the terraces where you can have seats. There can be a sort of theater, and really it is given to the users in a very generous way to help them to have more and more place to work and to experiment. That is one of the floors. The terraces which are open to them always. That is a section, so you can see how many levels there are, and the way to put life in this tower. That is a model that we have made. The circulation are always different from each level to another one, so that the people can see together, and they can use this place to create video installations, movings. I mean, really to have this place that like an art place. And you have, of course, you have stairs which are protected, but you have also stairs in the middle of the atrium. That is the idea of the metallic panels, which are creating a sort of continuity. You have a lot of perforation because you have a lot of windows behind. That is the cafe and the main foyer, which are not protected. It's really a sort of monumental place where you can have a link between outside and inside. That is the terraces that you have on each levels. And we would like to continue the perforated work on the landscape to accompany the flows going to the theater. I will just show one project. That is the building that I have made in Saint-Étienne. You spoke about it a few minutes ago. It's an administrative building which is also close to the railway station. The idea for this building is also to begin a new district where the mayor of Saint-Étienne wants to demolish a lot of buildings and to create new contemporary architecture, mainly offices. Saint-Étienne is the center is here, the railway station is here, and the site is here. Saint-Étienne is not a very beautiful town, but you have a lot of little mountains. I mean, it's a town with a lot of slopes, and it's interesting because you have a lot of belvederes and point of views. The difficulty for us during the competition was the fact that we had to build the architecture for 8 future users, but none of them knew during the competition how many square meters they will want in the building. So that was a very big difficulty. We had to build something like 25,000 square meters, but the location for the users was not possible to anticipate. That was the first difficulty. And the second one was the fact that the mayor wanted absolutely to have a dance building. Of course it was, because the site was small, but he wanted also to keep a lot of transparencies, a lot of possibilities for the people to go through the building from a street to another. So we have tested a lot of models, but you can see each time, and particularly at the end, the way that we have one more time create a sort of regular volume, and we have folded it for 2 reasons. The first one, to keep the continuity of the volumetry, to allow the users to fix their desire of square meters, not during the competition, but to do it after. And we had absolutely to keep a lot of flexibility. So we had to keep the idea of a continuous volumetry. And the second reason was to create a lot of doors, to create transparencies, and you will see that in more detail. So the last volumetry was this one, and it allows the people to increase or decrease their number of square meters. They only have to get the approval of the neighbor, but because it's administration, they are always okay to do that. So the building keeps still now a lot of flexibility. That is a way to fold the building. You can do a model yourself. That is one of the first model. And in fact, you have 2 rows of building, two parallel volumes. When the first one is going up, the second one is going down. So you can have inside the offices a lot of views. You have not so much spaces where really you are in front of another part of the building. Here, when the first is going up, the second is going down, and the opposite is also here. You have 3 big doors, this one which is behind, and this one which is the main entrance to the courtyard, which is in the central part. The idea of folding the buildings is also inside the ground floor, inside some of the common facilities. That is the 3 doors. This facade is facing the south, and you have all the entrances which are connected to the courtyard, to the interior street. There was an idea of using a very bright color. I have chosen the yellow because the street that you can see here is very narrow. It's only 8 meters and the building is going up to 35 meters. So I wanted to create a sort of courtyard which is very playful, which is very bright, with a color which is like artificial sun. And that is view. I was speaking a few minutes ago about the fact that Saint-Étienne is a town with a lot of slopes, point of views, belvederes, and the building is in a way doing something like that, creating a lot of point of views, moving up and down. And for example, this picture is made in a place, in a working place, where you can really go through the door and having a look on the north part of the city and the mountain, which is far away. And the idea of the yellow is to create a sort of front facade, which is very playful. That is the volume, the building integrated into the context. You have very small buildings, but also very high buildings, like this one. The main entrance, and the idea of the yellow to always be behind the alignment, the outside alignment, because one more time there was monumental authorities and they don't want to have too bright colors on the outside facade. So my idea, it was like a joke, was to create the yellow only inside the interior facades. He was not so happy. That is the main courtyard, which is narrow, and with that, I wanted to have curtain walls and to work with the idea of reflects. So you can see that the yellow facade is creating a lot of reflects in the courtyards, and when you walk inside, it's full of gold and yellow colors, and it's really not dark. It gives an impression of happiness. And that is a way for the building to be folded, to create pieces of sky and pieces of views. And I think I will stop with that to have questions. Thank you very much. So I hope you will have questions.
I have a question about your second project, the one in, I believe it's Montpellier, where you said that it's the city, I believe, has not yet granted a permit for the project.
Yes.
The one with the 2 hotels and the housing on top. Are you at liberty to talk about why there are problems with that, the approval process?
In fact, in France, you have a very bad practical, which is that you can fight against the permit. The town has delivered the permit, but after that, you can have associations, you can have neighbors who have the possibility to attack the permit. And they can attack it only on feelings. I mean, they don't have to prove that we are not respectful with the urban regulation. They can attack really with every type of reason, even if it's not really strict reason, so that they can attack everywhere, everything, and you have yourself to prove that in fact you are allowed to do that, that you respect the urban regulation. And that is a very bad way of doing in France, which stop a lot of projects, because you can spend 5 or 6 years to prove that you have right. And so that's terrible. But this project was fully agreed by the municipality, of course. We are attacked by an association which would like to erase 4 levels. because they had the feeling that the building is too high. They should visit Toronto.
Hi, I was just wondering, with the center in Israel, then you were showing how the terraces could be used as like little theater areas, and you were showing some of the theatrical lighting in the slide, and I was wondering if that was inbuilt or whether there was just a grid there, or how that was working.
Can you repeat just the end of the question?
I was wondering if the lighting that you were showing for the theatrical use of the terraces
Yes.
was built into the structure, or whether it was just like a theatrical grid system.
No, it's just a theater grid system. The idea, in fact, the project is quite, still now, it's quite too small for the municipality. When I had the project, we were something like 5,000 square meters. Now we have 7,000. And more we are developing the studies, more they have the feeling that the project is too small. So the idea of giving them the terraces, and also I didn't spoke about the rooftop, but I try to do my best to give to them some more places that they can use. So it's not very expensive to give them the terraces, it's not very expensive to give them the rooftop, and also to allow them to play with the central core, with the tower. So the idea in the project is really to use every place, everywhere, to give them sort of flexibility and to anticipate new needs that they have. More the months are going, more they have new needs. So we try to help them to find them in the project, because in the other hand, they don't have so much money, and we have to do a sort of, economical project. So the way to give the terraces is really important for them to work on them too. Mm-hmm.
Concerning this last project, you mentioned that it was built for occupants that weren't sure how much area they wanted in the building. Is that's
this last building?
Yeah.
It's dedicated to administrations.
But you said something about it was built for different occupants that they didn't know how much area they wanted in that building.
Yes, absolutely.
Correct. How does the form of the building respond to that problem?
In fact, when I've done the competition, I only knew that there will be something like 8 users, and that the total of the square meters that I had to build was 25,000 square meters. And even when we began the phase under construction, the users didn't finish their decision about how many square meters they wanted. So the volume was very helpful because, for example, I could quite give an example. If you look at the pictures in the beginning, for example, one of these users, I don't remember who is he, but for example, he wanted to increase his number of square meters, so we decided to give to him the floors until here, and the range had to move a little bit, and so on. It was really like the continuous volume helped us to organize until the end of the phase under construction, to organize the allocation, the location of each user in the building. And even now, for example, we have an example, I think it's the biggest user, which is here. He has decided 1 year ago to decrease his number of square meters. And we have managed with not this one, but the orange, which is on the rear part of the building. we have managed to increase its own square meters. So each time they're discussed together to organize a way to partition between them, to create the partitions, to increase and to decrease.
Thank you for it. Was a beautiful lecture and some very beautiful work. I want to ask you about, I don't remember the name of the project, but the Expo, the European Expo project, which
one?
the
One close to the airport.
Yes, Europa City.
the Europa
Europa
City.
City.
You mentioned sort of obviously that it would be a controversial project, and I think your proposal has a certain radicality to it. So I want to ask how, as a project in your planning, as a project like that would go forward, you would avoid what I think the kind of pitfalls you're trying to avoid by saying you wanted to capture the atmosphere of Europe without, for example, its iconography, right? So as a way of comparison, a number of years ago, I saw a lecture by the historian and critic Stanislas von Moos, the Swiss critic, and he had written this very highly regarded book on Le Corbusier. But he gave this very strange lecture where he presented this project in Switzerland called Swiss Miniature. Do you know the project?
No.
There's a project, I think it's not near Zurich, but there's a project in Switzerland which is a theme park.
It's built?
Oh yes, it's been there since the 60s.
Ah.
It's a theme park where all of the great landscape and other monuments of Switzerland are placed, and then there is a monorail that takes you around to see them. I've been there. It's actually great. But he gave this lecture. It's called Swiss Miniature. It's great.
Yes.
They have the Matterhorn and all sorts of things there. Anyway, he gave this lecture, and he said, this is Le Corbusier's urbanism. He sort of compared the way this park was organized, and he talked about it as a kind of scale model of a way of organizing the city. So my question for your project is the extent to which, as a kind of research, you see it as a model for other ways of organizing cities, and if you don't, that's fine. And then secondly, if you don't, how you avoid this issue of very quickly being forced to deal with, let's say, iconography and imagery of places, because when you said atmosphere, I thought, okay, you have plants and color, and we could get into smell and all sorts of sensory things that don't deal with, let's say, the usual iconographic issues. But then when you showed the views of the inside, I thought it kind of went in that direction. Does that make sense?
Yes. So about the first question, of course, I don't want absolutely not to extend that to a city.
Yeah.
It's difficult because the building is 700,000 square meters, so it's completely huge. But the idea is to stay into an architecture scale, and to avoid it's not a city. It's really a sort of parkour. It's a huge shopping mall. But it was very helpful for me to have two constraints. The first one was the landscape, which has to go to flows on the roof of the project. We had to keep very flat because of the airports. And that was helpful because it's a sort of topographic architecture. You don't have any towers. It's really close to the ground floor, close to the landscape, the natural and the created landscape. So it was helpful to have this constraint because the architecture is a building, but in the same time it's a landscape. And coming to the question of the atmosphere, it was also helpful because it was so many square meters. It was helpful to try to partition those square meters, 100,000 square meters by 100,000 square meters, which is huge scales. But it was helpful to partition them and to create in each of them something which is specific. The goal of Europa was given by the client, and I'm interested into Europa because I think there is a very deep link between all the countries in Europa, but in the same time, there are so many differences, and I wanted to try to express them. Of course, it cannot be kitsch. I mean, it cannot be first degree. So the main goal that we wanted to use is through the landscapes, through the feelings, the sensitive feelings. For example, to have the feeling to be cold or hot, the colors, the smell. So it's not visual. Mainly, it will not be visual. The roof is, we have worked with a landscaper. The idea for the roof is to work on a specific scale that you can find in the landscape, which is not very small, which is not trees. It's very small trees. It's something like 1.5 meters. And you have plants, very specific plants in each country of Europe. Lavenders, on the north you have a lot of trees which are called bouleaux, with white, it's small trees. And we began the atmosphere with the landscape, with the trees, with the plants, and we continue with the impress of cold and warm, the colors, but not the physical colors, the color of the light, because in fact when you are underneath the roof, you don't have any natural light. So we will work with artificial light, which will create a link with the physical light that you can find in Finland or in Spain. So
I mean, I don't mean this to be overtly critical, because I imagine that the client required this thing to be highly integrated as a piece. But one could think of a project like that as a form of urbanism that, while it would perform for this function, may actually has the potential of a longer life, a more resilient life. Because you talked about the leisure center that only lasted for a week in the other project. Malls, as we know, when they're conceived in a certain way, they have what we say a shelf life, or a kind of duration. So that's why I asked why one wouldn't try and take a project of that size and conceive it more as a kind of footprint for a city.
Yes, but I don't want to speak about, to think about cities, because I'm not working on master planning on cities. And I was more attached to avoid the impress of a city, to create something which is like a building perforated with landscapes.
Okay.
Again, thanks so much for such a stimulating lecture. It was wonderful to see your project. I have two questions. One is a more personal question, and one is a general question. The first one is, I always wondered how you were able to go around landmark commission in the Champs-Élysées for the Maison Citroën, because I did visit it many times. It's a lovely project, but when you walk on the Champs-Élysées, I would say that, 90% of buildings are historical landmark buildings. So how did you manage to get around it, which I think was an incredible challenge? The second question is one regarding a motif that I see through all of your projects, and it's one of the building envelope and patterns. I mean, it seems to be playing a central role in your architecture, and maybe I would like you to tell us more about it, patterns and envelope. Thank you.
The first question about Citroën, it was of course very difficult, but if you look at the Champs-Élysées, the architecture is not so historical. I mean, you have a lot of buildings which have been made during not Haussmann, but during the 1930s, 1960s. So the thing which is very strong on the Champs-Élysées is the respect of the alignment. But if you look at the buildings, some of them are very different, and that was my help in the project. In fact, I had of course to fight a lot, but in a way, I have fight less in this project than for the extended part of the museum, of the Modern Art Museum in Lille. In France, you have always to fight a lot against the monumental authorities, because they are not open-minded at all. And it was a sort of paradox, but because Citroën is a French brand, is a Parisian brand, it has helped me to fight for very contemporary architecture. Citroën loved the project. They wanted absolutely to keep it, not to, to decrease the quality of the contemporary architecture, the transparency, the very pure idea to be continuous and so on. And I think I was helped by the fact that Citroën is Citroën. I think it was helpful. But yes, when you are an architect, you spend your life to try to convince. And the second question was, yes, about the patterns. I must say that for me, when I work on a project, I always work in advance. In the very beginning of the project, I deeply work on the context, on the site, trying to understand it, on the program, trying always to improve the program. So after I try to create a sort of link between them, a hierarchy or an harmonical link. But I'm always working immediately, even in the beginning, on the materials, on the fact that the building will be very opaque or transparent, on the texture, on the materials. I didn't show the project made in the Avenue de Friedland, which is headquarters for Barclays, and we have made a facade which is built with translucent marbles. And it's beautiful because the marble is translucent. There are a lot of lines. It's very graphic. I think the material and the texture, it's very important for me in architecture. And I don't think about first the volume, and in the second step, the material, and the third step, the color. For example, Saint-Étienne, the yellow helped me in the beginning to accept to do a very dense building with a very narrow interior street. So when I begin a project, I have always the goal to work all the aspects of the architecture in parallel. And we like a lot in the office to experiment new materials, and I think the pattern, the ornament, sometimes in the project they are not present, but sometimes they are really they are a part of the birth of the project. For example, Citroën, the facade, it's the logo. And the facade is a sort of pattern of the logo, and I think it's quite the first idea before everything else.
I was curious if I might ask two questions. The first one is about that Citroën building. Mm-hmm. Having lived in Paris, downtown, I know that it rains usually about twice a day. I know that it's dirty, dusty, filthy. And I was curious as to the people that have to work there, the people that come in to look at the cars, the people that have to work to clean it. I was wondering how the building is holding up, and also if it's leaking at all in the roof.
If it's
leaking, and how do the people keep it clean? Like, is it a pleasure to be in for the people that must be there all the time and not just come and go, wow, if you know what I'm saying? Mm. My second question would be, you and I are born in the same year, an ocean apart from each other. However, I noticed that you seem to, I don't know how to put this, I'll do my best. Your buildings, you take a lot of thought and consideration into who's going to use it, how they're going to use it, and what has influenced you to think that way. I don't want to use that cliche out of the box. I know it's not revolutionary. Sometimes different people doing these things. I've seen Raymond Moriyama do this in the 70s. Other people do different things along the way. So I was just very curious as to what influenced you growing up to think and produce buildings that you do.
About Citroën, there is a difficulty in the building. It's the fact that the building is made with precious materials. It's very sophisticated. It has to express the fact that, I mean, it's very, there are a lot of money in the building. Citroën wanted that because really it's their main international center of communication. So it has to be not poor, it has really to express the luxury, the sophistication of the brand. And the difficulty is the fact that we have a lot of visitors, 3 or 4 times more than expected. Because it is the Champs-Élysées, because the public is not coming only for the cars, but also for the architecture. And of course, the difficulty is to clean all that, to change the cars, and so on. And I don't know what to say facing that. I admit the fact that it's expensive to clean the building, but I think Citroën has to, to pay for that because it's the Champs-Élysées. It's the most expensive square meters in France, in Europe perhaps, and you have to build something which is perfect, but after they have to put a lot of money to clean it. It's normal. You are on the Champs-Élysées, and one more time, it's the main building of Citroën in the world. Just a question about the cars. In fact, the atrium is a place, it's a huge void. In fact, it has a function because you have a sort of lift which is coming from the basement, and the lift is taking the cars coming from the pavement, from the Champs-Élysées. The lift is taking the cars on the shelves, and they do that 4 times a year. In a way, it's very expensive to clean the building and to repair it and so on, but they always use it totally. It means that the building was made to change the scenographies a couple of times in the year, and they really do that. Still, 6 years after the opening, they have always a lot of pleasure to change the scenography, and they do that 4 times a way. So in a way, it's successful. The only problem, if it's a problem, is the fact that there are 4 times more visitors than expected, and an architecture has also to, is confronted to that. The second question was the fact that I'm always looking at the way that the users will live in the architecture, if I resume. But I think it's the objective of the architecture. And I think it's important for my clients to understand that I have a personal way to create architecture. So he has to respect the fact that, in a way, architects are a little bit artists. There are something which is very subjective in architecture. But in my side, I have to respect the fact that I'm not totally an artist. I'm doing something where people will live. And I think it's more you can anticipate the goals and the way for the users to live in your architecture, more you can be confident in the fact that the building will be respected. And for example, Citroën, I'm very happy to realize, even if it's a huge crisis, a financial crisis in Citroën, even that they continue creating a lot of scenography. So it's successful for me because I have made a flexible building and they play really with that. And I think one of the most quality of an architect is to anticipate the goals of the users, the way that they will have to live in your building. And if you do that, it's very simple, because when you have finished a building, you can let it, and you don't have to check if the client is respecting it, and if they are not doing changes, if you can accept the changes. You can leave the building, and the building will have its own life. So for me, it's very important to respect the users, to analyze deeply the program when I'm doing a project, to try to understand. For example, for the Gaîté Lyrique, it was so difficult to anticipate the way for the digital arts to play and to work in the building, because it's typically a form of art which is really moving, and we don't know tomorrow what they will need. So always it's my huge stress to try to do something which is fitting perfectly to the users, not for 1 or 2 years, but for the maximum of years.